Okay, should we go?
Yeah, sure.
Let's go. Morning, everybody. It's a long week. We're finishing up. But last but not least, we've got Phil Greenstreet with us, who's won some Academy Awards for the stuff that he does. And we'll have a look at the SoftDrop today, which we always find that the backdrops actually are the reference to all the lighting that we do. So they're absolutely vital to everything that we do. That's really great and a pleasure to have you here. So hand it over. Thank you. So I'm gonna sit down so I can use this gizmo. All right, so we're from Rosco. Rosco known for a variety of things, historically for lighting filters. More recently, we acquired DMG Lumiere, a French company making lights, 6-chip LEDs, and they're very nice lights. And you may have seen people messing around with little mix books around, which is our digital swatch book, which we've just launched, which makes a variety of colors and matches a variety of Rosco gels as well, all in a nice little package. And it's the same chip set as the big mix lights. So it's kind of a handy tool for communicating between production designers and cinematographers, because you can say, okay, I'm going to be lighting this carpet at 6,500 kelvins, because I can. And the production designer can actually look at carpet samples with the same source. So it's a pretty useful piece of kit. The reason I'm concerned for the welfare of the production designers is because they're the people who pay our wages. It's the production designer who specifies and chooses the SoftDrop. But generally speaking, it's going to be them asking the cinematographer, is this okay, and are you familiar with it? So us introducing SoftDrop to you guys is very important. We always strive to put them out for the workshops that we do. So we support Sony, Canon, and ARRI in their workshops. We have this here because what we found is that the more people who see it, the better off we do, and the easier everybody's job becomes, including the production designer. And further to that theme, next year, we're hoping to do a panel featuring both cinematographers and production designers to be able to talk about the interaction between the two. People say that the director and DP have a relationship like a marriage, but the cinematographer and the production designer are actually married even before that. So cinematographers are basically bigamists. But that's okay, because it's the film industry and anything goes. I'm joined today by one of my colleagues, a number of my colleagues, but the important one for all of you would be Sarah Horton, who's standing in the corner here. Sarah is based in Berlin. She herself is a former art director, which again is why I feel I have to play nice with them while she's watching. She covers Europe, the Middle East, Africa. So probably, is there anybody in this room who's not from Europe, the Middle East, or Africa? And I know who you're from, but I know where you live. So, okay, so yeah, so pretty much everyone in this room, when you want a backdrop or when your designer is asking about backdrops, Sarah's the person to talk to. I'm Phil, I cover everything else. As Jakob said, I've been doing it for a while, 27 years at this point, and all for one company, which is a bit unusual. But Rosco is kind of like that. They're very supportive, and they let you kind of run with your own ideas and come up with new stuff. And as long as it keeps working, they keep letting you play. It really is it's a lot of playing rather than real work. So backdrops, I mean, they're something that are very basic, they're fundamental. I mean, they've been around forever. They were part of theater, they came from theater. Obviously, people used to hand paint them. And when the film industry took off, they adopted the same techniques. So guys painting by hand, and this continued quite a long time. When you're lighting a hand-painted drop, In the early days of cinema, it would have all been by natural light. I mean, there were no ceilings on the sets, so that's why California and Florida became very popular centers of film production, because there was reliable sunshine. And so it would be lit by natural light from above, which for hand-painted drop works very well. And as time went by and sets became more complex, roofs went on to stages and electric lighting came in. But the technique basically remained the same. It's still hand-painted drops being lit from above and the front, but now by electric lighting, whether it be arc lights or whatever's coming to hand. Technology advanced, and translights came in. And basically a translight is kind of what it sounds like. It transmits light. So it's a big photographic slide. Originally black and white, when the film was black and white, obviously, and then as film moved into color, backdrops, of course, didn't, because they're always lagging a bit behind. So backdrops remained black and white, but were hand-tinted, rather in the style of old postcards. But essentially, the lighting for a translight is pretty simple. You get a row of sky pans, or depending on the size of it, maybe 2 rows of sky pans, or even 3, and light from behind, so it transmits light, hence the name Translight. Vittorio, as always, was an innovator in color, and that includes in color translight. So when One from the Heart came out, they switched to using color photographic backdrops, again, lit from behind, same kind of idea, now called chromatrans, because they had chroma. But the writing was kind of already on the wall for the photographic processes, because the digital age was dawning. This is early 80s, and people started printing on digital media. So originally on a fabric that was a system made by 3M, and then later on vinyl with increasing larger and larger systems. So our first dabbling with vinyl, which was before my time, I'd like to add, was on Cape Nally. And back in the day, we were computer printing on the front of a piece of cloth, and then we'd actually send it off to a bunch of scenics in a scenic house in New York to paint the back. And what you do by that is you can paint a blackout mask on the back of your drop, so that where there's a white patch, light will come through, and where there isn't, obviously light won't. So when you backlight your drop, windows light up. So vinyl became the standard medium. I think Rosco pioneered it, but it was very quickly adopted by a bunch of other people. With vinyl, you've got to be kind of careful about lighting the front of it, because it's very shiny material, even if you put a matte finish on it. So what you want to do is light from above and then send any of the direct reflections into the floor, so front light with as high an angle as possible. And then when backlighting using the day-night approach, again, much the same as translight, you're just sending light straight through it, because it's a very dense, diffusive material. The downside of vinyl is that it eats about 2 stops of light going through, so particularly when you're using hot lamps, as we used to, suddenly you've got a hell of a heat source outside of your set, and the air conditioners in California are cranked to maximum, and everybody's fighting the heat that appears. Thankfully, we've kind of moved on from that, but it used to be a bit of a problem. My innovation was saying, well, computer painting the front of something and hand painting the back of it is just bloody stupid. We've got these really fancy computers, and of course this is 1993, so really fancy computers were only marginally more stupid than the typical watch nowadays. But it was like, well, we can do both pictures using the computer, and everybody said it couldn't be done as usual, but it could. So that pretty much formed the basis of what Rosco do for the next 20 years, and then initially people were mocking us, saying, oh, why would anybody possibly want a backdrop that does day and night? It's so much better to have 2 backdrops. And everybody, every grip, every production manager saying, are you crazy? Of course it's better to have one drop that does two. I mean, that's insane. So very rapidly it became the standard backdrop in the industry. We used it on a number of shows. This was a good one. Oliver Wood was around earlier in the week. I actually went to see this very excitedly because this was like the first huge project that I worked on, and I was very excited to see this. And I went to see it, and I thought, oh my God, they've actually gone back and reshot my scenes because there was a wisp of steam going up in the background, which of course just means that they added a wisp of steam as a VFX in the a post effect in the background. But I shot the image and it totally fooled me. So it's very easy to deceive the eye with just the merest amount of movement that adds life to a drop, which we'll get to in a minute. Rabbit was another step in that direction. Basically started shooting motion plates from the same direction, same position as the stills that we used to make the backdrops. Vinyl, as I said before, has its issues. Shiny, heavy, stinky, wrinkly, and basically a one company ecological disaster. If you take a vinyl image, you can literally take it out and bury it in a landfill, come back 100 years later, hose it off and shoot with it. So a bit of a disaster for the future. So there's reasons to get away from plastic, and that's what we've done. Sure. So 2014, oh, that's a lot louder. 2014, we switched to cotton, and at the same time switched to a very large production machine, large being 12 meters wide, which fortunately you can get cotton 12 meters wide. But it really opened up a whole new world for us. So suddenly we have the capability of making front light images 12 meters high and 55 meters wide, and to try to put it in perspective for the older ones among us who actually coexisted with dinosaurs, that's this big. The advantages of SoftDrop were obvious to start with. I mean, they're huge. They're automatically matte finished because they're cotton, so a very matte surface. They're lighter, so the grips love to hang them. They hang just like you're hanging a drape or a curtain. The wrinkles that show up, you just kind of steam out and they go away. It's super eco-friendly. You bury that in the ground, 5 months later it's gone back to the soil. And it's natural cotton, it's water-based inks, and during the production process it's 150% carbon offset as well. So probably the most eco-friendly product that you'll find in the film industry at the moment. And it's also the sound guy's best friend, and I don't know how much time you spent on set, but the sound guy doesn't like anyone because they're all enemies to them. But this stuff, rather than the vinyl, which was some sort of a sound reflector, which just made their problem worse, this is actually a sound absorber. It's a baffle, so it even makes the sound guy's job easier. And instead of coming in a big roll, it just folds up into a little package and goes on a pallet, or a big package, as it turns out. Goes in a box, and you ship it, and you've got it the next day pretty much anywhere in the world. We think 3 days we can get it literally anywhere in the world, including Mongolia, wherever. So this was one of the test pieces. In fact, this was the very original prototype, which is why it has those funny lines on it. And we tested it, and sure enough, you light it exactly the same way from the front as everything else. So artificial light from above. Because it's so soft and matte, you can light it from pretty much anywhere and not get kick off it. So it's a little bit more forgiving than any other surface, but it's pretty simple. What we did find is that from the back, the best way to light it is actually from the bottom. And that has been the source of a number of issues for us, because everybody knows how to light backdrops because they've been doing it for 25, 30 years, but that involves lighting it the old way. And so now we're trying to encourage people to light it obliquely, either from the bottom, the top, the sides, just anywhere but directly, because when you light it directly, because it's cotton, you can see lights through it, which is obviously not attractive, not useful. So that's one of the reasons I'm here now, is just to educate the people who will actually have to be facing it with the way the different techniques of lighting it. And what we've got is a setup over here that Jakob and his guys put together, which is actually one of the best I've ever seen, better than the stuff we usually recommend. So this is well worth having a look at. And we'll show you the effect as well. But of course, we like I said, we bought DMG Lumiere. So wow, we have access to a whole bunch of technicians who could come up with a beautiful soft drop light for us. And in the 2 years that we've owned them, they haven't produced anything. But if any of them are out there, we're still waiting for the backdrop light, because it'd be really useful to have one. In the meanwhile, we're recommending lights by other people. So pretty much for that backlighting, any wall washing light is pretty good. I like the chroma cues because they throw light about 8 meters in the air from only 50 centimeters behind the backing. So you can light it in a very small space and get a very even wash of light, which is one of the ways to do it. The other way is to take a very painterly approach and just light the bits that you need, which is really what we recommend. But if you do want to do that big wash of light over a big backdrop, this is the way to go. The first drop we did was on a show called Tyrant. It was quite a modest effort. I mean, 18 meters wide and 6 meters high. I see a hand in the back. Is that saying you worked on Tyrant? No. Okay. Okay. And we thought, well, okay, that was good. So let's slowly expand. Next time we're going to go to maybe 7 meters by 30. Wow, that would be amazing. And then this project came along, and Marcus Förderer, I don't know, does anyone know Marcus? Does everyone know Marcus? I mean, he's quite well known at this point. He's a lovely, lovely fella, and he's very hard to say no to. So when he came and asked us if we could do some backdrops for him that were 12 meters high and 60 meters wide, and having been given very specific instructions by my boss not to sell this new product, I of course said, yeah, sure, we could do it, which launched into the biggest nightmare of our entire careers. We did about 2 years worth of research and development in 2 weeks. But we pulled it off, more or less. And the show itself didn't do that well, but the backdrops were phenomenal. So they had riot scenes in front of them with multiple sources, reflections all over the place, and no kick off the backdrop whatsoever. This is 2 guys standing literally less than a meter in front of a backdrop. And armed with that, we then moved on. Homeland came calling upon Sarah, as it happened, because they were over here at the time, and Dave Klein, who's been the DP on that for 4 seasons, the last 4 seasons that we've worked with him. He really embraced it. So we did Homeland season 5, season 6, season 7, and season 8. Unfortunately, because season 8 isn't out yet, we had to seriously redact this one. But trust me, it's beautiful. It's just being a bit vague about what it's about. So the one thing that Dave did, as all great DPs do, was completely ignore the instructions we gave him about how to light it. But he figured it out for himself. So Dave's good friends with Evans, who's a DP who's involved with Quasar. So he wanted to use Quasar tubes. You can't use them in the traditional way, which is to hang ladder lights behind the backdrops, because you see ladders of light behind the backdrop because it's see-through. But what he did was came up with this really cool array system. So you kind of got the best of both worlds. You got to use his friend's product, and you got to use SoftDrop, and he just made it work. So I guess the moral of that story is there are actually no hard and fast rules. These are just guidelines, and every cinematographer is just going to go off and do whatever they want anyway, and I fully know that. So we just offer advice, and then we try to hold your hand when it didn't work out because you didn't listen. So this is season 6 in New York, but he's been using the same multiple arrays ever since. And then went on to do the Deadwood movie as well, using the same lights again, and the same soft drops. Well, not the same soft drops, I mean other soft drops, because New York in this century would not suit Deadwood in the 1800s. We've done some other projects, some of which I'm not particularly proud of, but I have a colleague who likes the backdrop, but likes the picture even more. I'm not saying who he or she is, but very popular image in Rosco land. There's a TV show in America called You're the Worst. I don't know if you get it here. It's about an English reprobate, basically drinking and taking drugs across America. I'm not quite sure why I identify with that one, but again, the view of Silver Lake that they chose worked very well. So one that I'm particularly proud of. And then we did, some movies that, most people have heard of. We did Kingsman, the second one, so the not so good one. But we did the view from Eggsy's house, the view from Eggsy's mom's house, the view from Donald Trump's house. We did this. Anyone heard of this one? No, okay, didn't think so. Actually, the reshoots on Rogue One, Greg used this, and he's now using this on his current project, whose name I can't mention. Please don't. We did this. This was obviously quite an important movie at last year's Camerimage. One of the interesting things that Roger did with it was we actually printed the backdrops very neutral, and he then added light. So essentially what he was doing, I had some of the guys from Technical are asking how we did the lighting, because obviously if you did this as blue screen, you'd have blue light coming through the window continuously, and you couldn't get this effect. But what he was effectively doing was using the soft drop as a bounce. So just by throwing a lot of orange or whatever light on it, you can create a really good soft source for whatever you want to achieve, and you have this beautiful orange spill light throughout all of the sets. And that's something we've heard a lot. I mean, obviously, in this case, you got a blue sky, so we might have been a bit more smart using white light or blue light, but you can't turn down the opportunity to reference Roger Deakins when you're doing a presentation about your product. So lots of orange. And these were rather large backdrops. They were, 20 meters high by 80 wide, 90 wide. Sorry, I say big. I mean, they were big for the time. Every year, it seems that people decide they're going to get bigger stuff. So, which is quite exciting and slightly scary at the same time. We did this. Again, technically, it was very interesting. As a movie, probably not one of the major Academy Award contenders for this year, but they wanted to create this romantic fantasy of New York. So it was all about adding extra color into the backdrop itself and then pumping more color into these scenes as well. Technically a very different sort of approach. This is pretty much the opposite. It's very minimalist, but again, it came down to choosing whether to use blue screen or projection or an LED wall. And in this case, it just came down to price, because we were a quarter of the price of an LED wall and half the price of a projection system. And if anyone knows how UPMs or line producers work, the 25% option is always the one they're going to go for. But it was very successful. It was the glass box shoot 'em up scene at the end, and and again a very large backdrop, large in this case being 140 meters wide and about 12 high. We also did this little movie. Again, you may not have heard of it, but it was. It's one of those things where, sure, we worked on it, but we're so far in the background that you're not supposed to notice what we did. Although I did have Stephen Poster say, I knew which scene that was. So for those of you who might be interested, it was basically his mother's apartment, the view, which I shot in the Bronx in New York as a thunderstorm was rolling in. So there were lightning strikes on the horizon, and I'm up on the tallest building in the neighborhood with a camera, which is not my favorite thing. So on set, this is one of the European projects. I can't remember which one, but Sarah would know. But apparently Sarah doesn't know. Okay, but quite pretty. US project. It's really hard to make an image that tells you what's going on, because if you do it right, it just looks like a beach scene. So you have to always try to get that sort of bit of whatever to show that it's not really it's not reality. Same effect. This is from her. It's not from Home Alone. No, it's from Daddy's Home, which Julio Macat shot, who did the RE workshop yesterday. And this was one of the things that kind of got us thinking that, well, it's nice, but obviously it's a tree and it's not moving very much. So perhaps we need to do something about that. I mean, as you can see, the whole thing's a lot of foliage, but a little on the static side. Likewise, this is a more recent project, which again, I can't tell you what it is, but you're gonna love it. It's a jungle in Panama that was kind of an interesting shoot. But it has introduced this new aspect ratio that I think is gonna take off. So, people debate whether they should be using 1 to 185 or whatever. This is 1 to 15.375. And I think it's the format of the future. I think everybody's going to be making movies just this shape. So in a more sort of manageable chunk, here it is. The way we shot it, we're trying to get a shot inside a jungle. And I don't know if you ever tried shooting in the jungle. It's kind of tricky because you can be outside the jungle shooting in, but then of course all the lights coming on the front, and it doesn't look like you're inside the jungle. It looks like you're outside looking in. And then if you get inside the jungle, you literally cannot see the jungle for the trees. There's no way. And this thing being 230 meters long, there's no way you can find a clearing big enough to get inside. So what we actually did in the end was find a road going through the jungle where the canopy closed over the top, and then basically shot across the road. 30 different camera positions walking down the road, shooting. So we got that effect of being in the darkness and yet having the backlight coming through. But again, what we've got here is some lighting options. Can we kill the front light and then crank up the snow? There we go. This is a gizmo called an X effect. It's a LED projection system with rotating glass in it, basically. So what the glass does is it textures the light. Here it looks kind of goofy because it's just blobs of light. But if you put this outside a window, as we did with the Home Alone set that Julio had going yesterday, you get this sensation of movement, of snow falling outside. And that's really all you need to do. You don't need to actually have trees waving in the breeze. You just have to have that, something that creates the feeling that motion is occurring. It could be a laser pointer just flashing one single solitary red light at the top of a building. It could be, can we crank up the other one and kill that one? So again, this is actually two wheels with different glass textures going in them. Again, you're not quite sure what's going on, but if you see this on top of the texture of that jungle, for example, the overall impression will be that bits of the jungle are moving. You're not quite sure why, and it doesn't necessarily make logical sense, but it's just enough to fool the eye, much the same way that one wisp of smoke fooled me for the Bourne Ultimatum. So what we're going to do is, we've got one of the backdrops hanging here. So I'd like everybody to come around the front, have a look at it if you haven't already done so, and even if you have, because I want to talk, I want you to listen. So this is an image that I shot in Japan about 2 months ago when I was doing a separate project, but it was such a cool image. So let's come around and have a look at the front of the set. Okay, so this is a kind of typical setup that you might use a backdrop, usually a bigger window, but bigger windows means bigger backdrops, so perhaps I'm biased in that direction. This is, like I said, Tokyo. It's one of the more famous areas, a lot of neon, a lot of motion. So what we've done is Jakob already set up with Frank as well, set us up to do day and night. So you can see what it's doing is cycling between day and night. So for day, we've got this very cold sort of daylight look going. And then as we want to go into night, we bring up the backlighting, kill the front lighting. So what you've got is something that'll do a full 24-hour cycle, because you can get twilight out of it as well. There is no motion, but as we've said before, you can add a bit using just texture, or you can even go as far as to leave one of those billboards blank and actually project into it, rear window style, if anyone's familiar with that technique. So you can actually give it life, and like I said, just one laser pointer flashing on top of a building is usually sufficient to fool the eye into thinking there's real life out there. So front light, like I said, is easy. It's like lights above, usually shining down on it, nice even wash. The good thing is, because it's cotton, it actually blends separate light sources quite nicely. So although you may have multiple, on a big one particularly, you may have multiple soft lights on it, on the cotton it all blends into one pretty much seamless, evenly lit thing. So let's go have a look at the back, and the guys who actually lit it will be able to tell you how they did that. So again, if Sarah can lead the way.
So Frank did most of the work here, so I'll hand over in a second. Basically what you see here are area 48 colors of BB&S lighting. At the bottom, they're giving this wash of light. Obviously, you can do them all in color and we're really happy with it. At the same time, we've got a 4.7 here, a LiPo, that's pushing down, and Frank put up a lot of reflectors to kind of catch the tackles of the light just to get the neon signs going. And if it's out of focus, it doesn't even have to be so precise. It's like Phil said, you really have to be careful not to direct the light at it, because you're just really going to see the holes from the other side. There's a kind of angle to kind of get it off. And I think the coolest thing that Frank did was actually put a red light there, because to spill and to wash color into the whole thing from the back, and if it's so soft, like from the snapback here, again with the area 48 color in the background, it's just really going to wash and bleed everything and give it more reality to it. Did I miss something? No. Thank you, sir. There we go. Anyway, so it's not that hard to light. It's just be careful of the holes in the back and come from the bottom. Hit the reflectors at the bottom.
Now, this was the first time I lit SoftDrop, and now I've been looking at it in a couple of days, and I see the problem is that you can see through it. So if I would do it again, I would take all the reflectors down, because if you go on the other side, you can see this spills a little bit out. You can see the reflector through the medium. So if I would do it again, I would take all the reflectors down and do the same thing. But yeah.
I was forced on the last movie, the Danny Cohen movie I shot. We didn't have a chance to light from the bottom because the window sills weren't that high. We went all the way down to the floor. So I had to end up doing it exactly the opposite, going from the top, going down with it, which works fine too. And you can hide lights easily, so we just had the 4.7s down going up. It's just black in the background, whatever. And then also behind it's also good if it's black, if you're really doing good day for washing stuff. But it's really actually, it's a no-brainer. It's kind of cool. Where's Phil?
I'm here.
Any questions? We could answer, but I guess I give it over again.
So yes, I'm not sure we want to be known as the no-brainer backdrop, but thank you. One of the things that was mentioned is the fact that it's slightly out of focus. This is because we actually add what we call selective softening or artificial depth of field to the image, so that we shoot in perfect, absolutely perfect focus, both Sarah and I. But then we actually degrade the image in steps so that near objects seem sharper and further objects seem further away, because what we were finding was that digital cameras, and I mean we first noticed on the Alexa because it's everywhere, digital cameras were interpreting flat goods as flat, and it was starting to look really bad. And the old solution was to put just a single standard blur over the image, which kind of worked, but ultimately, if you blur an image completely, you end up with 18% gray, which is no image at all. So by doing the selective softening and then actually reconstructing the grayscale at each level to establish a black and a white point, you end up with something that on camera looks extremely three-dimensional. So that's kind of the standard approach that we do. And what we offer is targets so that you can actually see what different levels of blur look like, and you can pick your menu of blur, so you can choose what's in the foreground, what's in the background.
But what I should mention, sorry, is that actually the amazing thing about the thing is when we were shooting the movie was the support from Rosco and from Sarah during the pre-production. That deciding this is the set, what it's going to be like, then the director decided basically what the background is going to be with the art department, and then Sarah actually came in and did the photos, and then there was the chance when the photos were taken, JPEGs were sent to Danny, and he could actually color grade them. So it was like a really clear choice where it's going to go. Then they were sent back, and then the defocus was chosen. Then we got small samples, those were tested, and then we actually did the big thing. So the support that Phil and Sarah offered was actually kind of exceptional, and Danny did it for the first time, felt really comfortable.
How long for that process?
2 weeks.
Okay.
No, that's really fast. That's because the set's standing. Okay, let's let's get going. I really felt Danny felt comfortable about the whole thing.
Yeah.
For the first time. Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, that's good to hear, because what we tried to be almost like an extra part of your art department while the process is going on. So we take the weight off your shoulders, and frankly, people just don't have time to mess around with that kind of level of detail when they're in the midst of production. So, I mean, in the fact that we've got Sarah, who was an art director, we have cinematographers on staff at Rosco, we have scenics, we have pretty much somebody from every part of the industry. Nico from DMG is a gaffer. We have a complete team, so even if there's a problem, we usually have the person who has the solution for it, which is kind of nice. I mean, it makes you a very much more broadband organization than most people. Question?
Yeah, I'm quite curious about the effect in your experience developing it of color and saturation of the print, because like when I was looking from there, this print obviously looks too colorful and saturated for that set, and it kind of stands out in that sense. But yeah, I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that in other projects.
We basically start with a very neutral look, and then we can adapt it for the project. So, for example, one of the projects that we're working on right now, it's It's a night shot, but it's a transitional night shot, so it's going from sort of evening into night rather than day-night. And the DP wants to do some interesting lighting as well. So what we ended up doing was almost completely desaturating the front so that the cinematographer can go in and actually use sodium vapor lights to light the front so that it's a perfect match for the other shots that they're doing in location. But then the back has the full color so that they can sort of balance between the two. If they goose up the color and when they boost up the lights, color will come out through, the color temperature of the windows is already preset. So it's really, it's bespoke. I mean, it's like a hand-tailored suit. So we're building it to your requirements. Now in this case, we're building it to the requirements of a set that we haven't seen, that we had 5 minutes to make the decision. So it's like, what's going to look good? Oh, this. So there's a little bit of randomness about this. And not to say that that kind of randomness doesn't sneak into television shows or movies as well, because sometimes it is literally, oh, okay, we'll do that, and off you go. And of course, we also do rentals. So we have a large rental stock in Madrid that are available. But then you're just living in dead man's shoes. I mean, you're getting somebody else's backdrop, and they've already made all the decisions, and you may not agree with all of them, but it's still better to have a backdrop that costs 1/10 of the price of a full one that is at your disposal, especially if it's just for one quick shot. Sorry.
I mean, we had like 8 different moods on one print. So we were shooting like a full movie, and we always went back into location. So we had to do magic hour, and you can get really funky with the color LEDs. So we can really saturate the blues to get like a magic hour, and then you pop up some tungstens in the background, and then we went to full day. And it's really, we didn't have the time to set it up like this, but actually you can watch it through the window, and you really just kind of drift into this whole daylight cycle. So you really can do a full day with it, no matter what the time of day is with it.
Yeah. And sorry, always remember things. There was a show in the States called Without a Trace, who had one big FBI office. And they said it, we did the backdrop in the first season, and then they started getting bored because it was just the same thing over and over again. So the DP and the gaffer got together, and they started setting up the board so that they could have literally every lighting situation known to mankind. So you could actually dial in wet Tuesday afternoon, and they would have a lighting setup for it, color, temperature, effects, everything. Which, given that the show ran for about 10 years, was fortunate, because although it was 10 years, you know, they didn't get so bored, and the audience didn't always see the same thing outside the window. And it's amazing what you can do with a little color temperature change on the backdrop, and then a low shaft of sunlight coming in, and suddenly it's 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Any other questions? Yes?
Could you light it up as if it's day?
From here?
Yeah.
Yes, if we put the daylight on, it'll really make everything pop. Because obviously it's acting in transmission mode, so it doesn't really matter which side you're on when you're transmitting. So on occasion, people have been known to do this in reverse, and actually, there we go. Oh, there's still red on it. But it means you can see most of what's going on in the backdrop. It does mean that the wrinkles that we didn't bother to spray out suddenly pop out, but just ignore that. That's, yeah. Oh, one very important thing, you don't want to get it wet. They're like gremlins. Don't feed them after midnight. Don't get them wet, because if they get wet, there's a flame retardant salt in here which will come out, and A, it will become less flame retardant, which apparently is quite unpopular, and B, it'll leave sweat rings. So we say you can get it damp, but not wet. And again, you don't want to overstress it, because cotton is a natural fabric, so you can get it taut, but not tight. So just be gentle with it. It'll be gentle with you. Oh, another one.
Yeah, can you explain a bit, because I didn't fully understand. Did you take 2 photos of the same location, in the day and in the night?
Yes. I actually took more than 2, because this is kind of compressed. So this represents 2 or 3 frames shot on a Mamiya 645 medium format, 80 megapixel, which is I mean, that's enough we do a lot of overlap, but that's enough to do a 20 meter wide backing. But yes, day and night, because if it's a simple scene, if it's just, a house with 2 windows, it's easy to computer generate 2 windows. This scene would not be so easy. But it does mean that you can kind of balance between the two. So you don't necessarily have to use both images. Like for some of the ads, maybe we took the day image and used that to make the night, just to make sure that the registration was perfect. But yes, it's definitely day and night images. And quite often quite often when we're shooting, we'll shoot a range of different times of day too. So we might get morning light, afternoon, magic hour, just so that people get a choice. Because sometimes it's a sunny day, but they want to do a winter scene. So by using magic hour, you get that very flat light, which we can then change the color temperature on and create a wintry look, even though we shot it in midsummer, which is a common problem. Taking the leaves off the trees, whole other problem though. But we do have at this point a library of like bare trees. I did a project in New York where it was still autumn when I went through and shot it. But it happened that I was going to an event in Finland. So there's one show currently operating in New York, which has New York trees at the bottom and Helsinki trees at the top. Anything else? Yes.
Can you talk a bit more about that pattern projector with the spread?
You know what? I would love to, but I have no idea how it works because I just do these things. However, Christian has got one set up. He's got the swimming pool effect going. Little defocused, Christian, but other than that.
Christian's at the front here.
Okay, so yeah, so Christian, do you want the mic?
Yes, I didn't hear the question, but I heard my name.
Oh, can you talk about the XFX projector?
Yes,
Like
okay.
the foliage pattern, if you could project that onto the
Oh, so okay, sorry. So yes, so one of the things you can do is you can actually shoot footage of, say, the foliage and project the real motion of the foliage on it. You can't let that. You'd have to actually use a proper projector. What you do with this is you just create texture, so you can create the illusion of waves. You can. I mean, it's a very theatrical kind of thing. Because it's just 2 rotating bits of glass. You're kind of limited to quite simple patterns. But what we're trying to do is build up a library of effects. So at some point we'll actually publish a library. So you take honeycomb and one of the other standard wheels, and you spin this one at this speed and that one at that speed, and there you go. So there will be a recipe book, but unfortunately we're spending so much time actually producing backdrops. I mean, we're absolutely swamped every minute of every day. So it's really hard to take time off to go do that, but at some point. But if you want to actually see it in action, Christian will show you how it works, and it's very simple. It's a very old technique. It's a simple technique, but it's just
The only
with
thing is
new
that
technology.
it's got interchangeable lenses, so depending on the distance, you can adjust your projection. That's, as Phil said, a theoretical constant.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes.
Yeah, curious about focal lengths that you use to shoot this. I mean, there are different effects, and whether you end up using one specific focal length in general.
Okay, so typically shooting from my end of things, shooting on the stills camera, the lens I use most often on the medium format is a 45. Sarah actually is using the Canon 5 DSR, which is a smaller format, so she's typically using a 24, 28.
24 and a 50.
Yeah, so 50 if you want to get a bit more detail, or if you're shooting something a bit further away that people are going to want to bring in. And again, on the Mamiya, that would be the 80. We're actually looking at other cameras right now. There's a really nice one out there, but that's for later. That's for next year. I'll tell you about the success with that. And then in terms of what you guys use to shoot it, it's totally up to you. It doesn't really get in the way. I mean, the ratio of the blur is affected by your selection of focal length. But that's why you have the test target and you make that choice and you say, well, I want a 4 on the front and I want a 16 on the back, or I want to go the full Soderbergh, which is insane. It's putting like a 32 blur on the front and a 96 on the back. I mean, we have a test target, and we have like the normal ones, and then we have what we call the Soderbergh series, which is 32, 64, 96. But I wouldn't recommend it because it's a great effect, but when you're trying to explain to your producer why the backdrop looks like it's tie-dye, then it's a bit difficult. But if you are in fact the cinematographer and the producer and the director and the editor, and you have nobody to answer to, Steven Soderbergh, then you can do whatever you want. And the effect was great. I mean, they used it on the Nick, and it was beautiful, but it's a very specific look. Any last one? Okay, we're good. If you want to talk to us, if you want to talk to me or Sarah, if you want to get Sarah's business card, we can do that after. But thank you all for coming. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was useful. And, well, see you on a set sometime.